Hello and welcome to the Rob Burgess Show. I am, of course, your host, Rob Burgess. On this, our 161st episode, our returning guest is Dr. Elizabeth Yuko. First heard Dr. Elizabeth Yuko on episodes 54 and 81 of the podcast. Dr. Elizabeth Yuko is a bioethicist and writer as well as an adjunct professor of ethics at Fordham University. She has written for print and online publications including the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Atlantic, Rolling Stone, CNN, Fodor's, Lifehacker, Reader's Digest, and Playboy. And now, on to the show. I guess, first of all, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling fine.
Yeah, me too. I'm feeling good. Thing is, right before all this happened, I was just getting over being sick, so I'm better than I've felt in a long time, so.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But, how are things there in New York City?
A little weird.
Right.
I haven't gone into Manhattan in about a week and a half. I live in Queens, and I had no reason to, so I don't know what it looks like now, but even about a week and a half ago, I was walking through Soho, and there were, no people around, which was very unusual, and, from people I know who are still commuting into work, the subway is less crowded, the commuter trains are less crowded, so that's kind of it. But I live in a building that's predominantly older people, and so I've been, trying to. They're a very friendly bunch who love to hug and kiss you, hello and goodbye. So I've been trying to stay away, and. The usual stuff is gone, hand sanitizer, toilet paper, but I think that's pretty much standard now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I was at Target the other day, and, usually going with my family to Target is usually a fairly, pleasant experience. It's not a high-stress situation, but, yeah, it's like everybody was on edge. The hand sanitizer, the toilet paper was gone. Somebody would cough, and, everyone's head would, whip around, to see where it was coming from.
Yeah.
And it was there was just a very, paranoid kind of feeling in the air. And, it wasn't, I didn't go shopping a whole lot today. I did go to, CVS, but that was about it. I was going to ask, how many confirmed cases are there in New York City at this point?
That is a good question. I have not checked yet today. But I know between Thursday night and Friday night, it went up by 20% overnight. So I think today New York announced the first 2 deaths from COVID-19, and the number of cases is now over 500.
Wow. Which, everyone's been saying it, but that's only because we haven't been testing people at the rate that other countries like South Korea have. And it's not that it's not out there, it's just that we're not finding out the hard numbers yet. So.
Yeah, and that's, first of all, very frustrating, but also not helpful from a public health or epidemiological perspective, because without, knowing how many people are actually infected and how they've been infected, et cetera, it doesn't really help us learn anything about the situation. So, and then it makes people even more paranoid. So if they've come back, from an international trip in the past few days, or really any air travel, a lot of people want to get tested just to make sure, to be safe. And that's not an option yet. The press conference, I think it was either Thursday or Friday. I think it was yesterday. Yeah, in the Rose Garden. They were saying that they are going to try to make the testing more available and have a rush on orders and all of that. So that is pretty. I'll believe it when I see it, but at least we're working towards that. Whereas in the beginning, they could only go through the CDC. All testing had to be done via the CDC, and also a large batch of their testing kits were faulty.
So frustrating.
Right. So in the beginning, they're fixed now, but and that's kind of what prompted local health departments, like here in New York and other places, to create their own tests. So I know the Cleveland Clinic has developed one. That was a big one I saw the other day. But yeah, so it's not just waiting for the CDC to get their act together. It's, it'll be easier to test locally, hopefully pretty soon.
Mm-hmm. But going back kind of to the beginning of all this, when did COVID-19, I guess it didn't have that name at that point. It was just called the coronavirus. But as you pointed out in the articles that I read that you had sent me, there's there's more than one. It's not just the coronavirus.
Yeah, I mean, SARS was one, MERS was one.
Right.
So this is just one coronavirus and the family of coronaviruses. But what makes this one different is that it's totally new and it's not something we've seen before. And a lot of the precautions people are taking or advice people are giving before we have more hard data that comes out is based on how other coronaviruses acted. But at this point, we do know that it's more contagious than SARS or MERS. So, yeah, that's so.
Right.
It's just it's like a wait and see game because a lot of, interviews I've done or people who've asked questions, have all these really good, really valid questions. But unfortunately, because of how early everything is, we just don't have actual studies or data to back it up yet. So we have gotten some preliminary numbers out of China from the Chinese CDC. So we have at least that. But I mean, because of cultural differences, infrastructure differences, et cetera, I don't know. I mean, they're definitely helpful, those numbers, because they're what we have right now. But it'll be better when we have data from the United States at this point.
Mm-hmm. But even the World Health Organization praised China's efforts, at least, as far as like locking things down and being very strict. But on the flip side of that, that's maybe the plus side of authoritarianism, if there is one, is that if you need to lock a population down, well, that's just the thing they know how to do. Like oh, you want us to quarantine and institute martial law? Yes, please. Like anything to do that. But near the beginning, though, the same kind of forces also stopped information from getting out that this was actually happening, and people that, like that one doctor that sadly died, that tried to warn everybody about this in China, but was then, what was he arrested for, like spreading false gossip or something? And it's like that's the other side of it, is that just like Trump, he wants the numbers low, so he's not not getting the tests in line, so the numbers won't go up. And it's just, maybe at the end part of it, that's a fine way to lead, but you need to be able to have this information be free flowing and be able to be believed, and not have it be like, oh, I don't want to be the one to say anything.
Oh God, yeah. How political this got so quickly was, I mean, I don't know why I expected anything else, but I thought, okay, it's like I don't know if this is the right sports term, but like a softball pitch, like a really easy one for the president, that all he had to do was like listen to science and not be horrible. And then he comes out, basically until Wednesday of this week, saying this is a Democratic hoax. I'm actually shaking more hands than usual. We're on our way out. Everything's going to be fine. And then at least, this week he's kind of turned around, if nothing else, to reflect what we know and not spread false information. So that's bare minimum, low benchmark, good, I guess. But yeah, that was just, he's like, yep, I'm here. I've been exposed to it. I'm going to keep shaking hands. I don't care. Democrats are making this up. So, yeah.
Yeah. But speaking of misinformation, there's been a lot of it from the very start. What in your, work reporting on this have you run into as some of the biggest misconceptions that need to be dispelled? What do people say that we just need to just knock that down?
So there's been a bunch of reports on boosting immunity and ways that you can like proactively help strengthen your immune system, et cetera. And while that's great in theory, and like we would love if that works, the data for things that are being recommended a lot, like vitamin C, elderberry, I can't remember another one, but the data on that for boosting your immune system or slowing the duration of a cold or virus is not, there is some, but it's not a lot. And I don't think it's enough to go by. I mean, you're not going to hurt yourself by taking supplements as long as you're not taking too much of them. But I think that might give people false hope. Or worse, much worse yet, certain religious groups are promoting the MMS, Miracle Mineral Solution, which is basically bleach. And I mean, they've tried to promote this for a bunch of different things. They say it cures autism. It's like just this cure-all. So they're encouraging people to buy and take that. Please do not. And then other groups are promoting a silver solution, which also doesn't do anything except harm you. So that's been some of them. Then there have been rumors about garlic and how if you just eat a lot of garlic, you won't get it. And garlic is delicious and it is good for you. And it does have some antimicrobial properties, but at this point we can't, I mean, it's probably not going to protect you from this. So, I see a lot of people kind of clinging to these hopes that have no or very little research behind them. So that's one thing. That's a big one. And then, the other one really, which is pretty prevalent, is that this is just this year's version of the flu and how, every few years we have a bad flu and we shouldn't panic. This is just how it is. Or people using statistics saying like this many people die from gun injuries every day. This many people have died from coronavirus every day. Why are we panicking about that? And that's kind of missing the point. Because, as you mentioned, we don't actually have accurate numbers as of right now. And also, it's kind of two different things. Monitoring the spread of disease versus like handgun deaths are, kind of two different things. So, that's kind of been one of them. And I know a lot of people have struggled when discussing this and the severity of it with parents, grandparents, elderly relatives who, for some reason, really are not taking this seriously at all.
Oh, I know. And that's so frustrating. Like, even to people my age, I am having trouble convincing that this is a real thing.
That's another rumor that I've heard quite a few times, is that alcohol kills it. Because,
oh my gosh,
take this whole hand sanitizer logic and saying, oh, if it needs to be 60% alcohol in the solution, then drinking alcohol probably will also help too. And as of right now, there is also no evidence of that. That's another fun thing that happened.
Yeah, I know. But let's talk about masks because, that's a big thing that people are hoarding, which is ridiculous because, I mean, you can probably explain this better than I can, but I saw an illustration that was like, if 10 people are in a room and one person is sick, but the 9 people that aren't sick are wearing masks, but the one person who is sick isn't, and they might as well not even be wearing masks for all the good it's going to do them because it's going to just shoot, the person's going to spray, all the stuff in the air and it's not going to help you. But if the one person that is sick has the mask, the other 9 people don't have to have masks, they're not sick, and then that'll be a better prophylactic measure than hoarding these masks. So when should masks be used? Should people have them at all, really? Or
it's really for the average person who's not working in a healthcare facility or dealing directly with people who have the virus. No, you don't really need that. It's really just if you're ill yourself. And in the beginning, when this all started, there was a big emphasis on N95 masks only, and everything else was useless. And then this past week, the Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York, said in a press conference that at least here in New York, if you can't get an N95 mask, which you can't, just like a regular surgical mask will be better than nothing if you're sick. But to make sure you take all the precautions and you're putting it on and off, throw it away right away. And then once the mask gets saturated with moisture, you have to use another one. But yeah, the one they had in the press conference was kind of your run-of-the-mill surgical mask, which is not the full N95 thing. But kind of what happened at the beginning was when they put this N95 recommendation out, people panicked and bought them all up. And now there's a shortage of them for healthcare workers and other frontline workers who genuinely need them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
that's kind of a problem.
I want everybody to be well if I can. I'll take enough for me or my family or whatever cleaning supplies or whatever other supplies, but I'm not going to be the person that's going to like it's all for me and then it's like but then everyone gets sick, and that doesn't help me. We're only as well as the sickest person that you're nearby.
That is recommended to wear masks is caregivers of
Yeah.
people who have it or have severe respiratory symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
because at this point, with the lack of tests, we don't know exactly. So yeah, if you're caring for someone, that's fine. But I flew about 2 weeks ago from Phoenix to New York, and the flight was completely packed. And there were so many people wearing a variety of different masks, from like a cowboy bandana thing over the nose and mouth to like masks you'd get from Home Depot for sandblasting or something. So there was a lot of stuff out there, and I am assuming most of them weren't sick. It was kind of just a precaution, but yeah, it was, you could kind of feel it, and that was kind of just the very beginning of it, and at least where like with all the media coverage in the United States, and yeah, everyone was wiping down their area, which is not bad. So I was like, oh, that's good. Hope we keep up these hygiene habits once this is all over.
Yeah, this is I'm really interested in seeing all the ways in which society does change because of this. I think handshakes are done. I think we're done with that as society. I'm glad, didn't need it. I'm done with that. A lot of other things are gonna probably go by the wayside, and working from home is probably gonna finally, I love working from home. I do it a lot, and this is my wheelhouse finally, an introvert that gets to work from home and socially isolated. Where do I go to sign up? But yeah. But one thing I wanted to talk with you about is the idea of flattening the curve, and this is not something I had really encountered before all this happened, but talk about that, because it seems like the idea is that most people are eventually going to encounter this. So, like, most people are going to get sick, at least at some level. Like, I mean, you may be asymptomatic all the way to you're not going to make it, but most people will probably just have it and mostly be fine if they're under a certain age and don't have immunocompromised. But you don't want everybody going to the hospital at the same time. So it's like you want to like spread that out as time goes on, right?
Yeah, I mean, you basically explained it. So normally I'm sure everyone's probably seen the charts at this point, but with a normal trajectory of a virus like this, it goes up really quickly, stays at the top for a little while, and then goes down relatively quickly. But what we're trying to do right now is, yeah, as you said, flatten the curve. So make sure, like, as it's going up, level it off to a rate of, being able to have people get the healthcare they need and have enough hospital beds and respirators, rather than, this steep incline and then decline, which is kind of what we saw in Italy, where they just ran out of beds, they ran out of equipment, and they ran out of care workers because they were getting sick too. So the idea here is that more people could potentially live who get infected if we have the resources available.
Right, but there does seem to be a sort of kind of blasé attitude, at least I've heard from the UK, at least, or maybe it's just Boris Johnson. I'm not sure if it's the whole government, but that seem to take the approach of let it run its course. We can't stop it. It's too late to contain it. Let's just buckle down and go through it the best we can, and we'll all get herd immunity, and then everything will be fine. I mean, that doesn't seem like a great plan, but
It's very weird for us to have this type of large scale public health situation where we might feel fine, but that's not the reason we're staying in or instructed to stay in or skip events or not fly, etc. And that I have found it to be really difficult for people to wrap their heads around. And so, like, in public health ethics, the concept is, yes, you're going to have to limit your personal autonomy, and things might not be ideal for your lifestyle right now, but you're doing it for the greater good, the health of the population, et cetera. So, but we're just not used to limiting our autonomy in any way. We want to do what we want when we want it. And so the idea of canceling plans or canceling vacations, just, if you're feeling healthy or you're young, you have low odds of dying from it, just to help other people is pretty foreign to us. So yeah, that's kind of tricky. Like, you have all the kids going on spring break who are like, we don't care if we die. At least I'll die in Palm Beach, or not a Daytona Beach. And we're like, no, that's not the point. You could be an asymptomatic carrier. You could
Right.
pass from one person to another on the plane without even realizing it. So, yeah, it's a shift in our mindset to be thinking about the health of others and the general population alongside ourselves, or putting yourself behind that. So that's just not what we're used to at all.
Yeah, and it's like I keep people hear people saying, "Oh well, I'll probably be fine. I'm in the good demographics," and it's like, well, thank goodness I don't know anyone that is. Wait a second, it's like most of the people I'm related to I could put in one of the two or both categories, immunocompromised or over a certain age, and it's like, I don't want to get them sick. So yeah, I'm gonna try to like keep myself healthy, and I have two kids, so that's always a challenge. But
Right.
I've already had hand, foot, and mouth disease actually when I used to be a teacher, so I don't know. Maybe that granted me some kind of something, but maybe not. But what do we know about? I know you said it's early yet, but what do we know about your immunity to it once you say you do get it? It runs its course. Are you good? You don't have to worry about it anymore. You're immune from it now that you've had it, or is it going to be like the flu every year and it's gonna? I guess we don't know, but I mean,
Yeah.
what would you say?
So that's too early to tell, unfortunately. We do know from other coronaviruses that once you get it, you're usually immune after that. But I think there've been a few cases of testing people who had it and then thought it was finished and they still had the virus, but that's not really clear whether they actually were over it or if it came back, or what's happening with that. So that is something people are keeping a very close eye on, because that's going to be really important.
Mm-hmm. Kind of switching gears a little bit, but just to the aspect of just being inside a lot and away from other people. You wrote a thing about kind of dealing with mental health when you're kind of going through this. What kind of challenges are people facing who do struggle with those kind of things, even under the best, even under non-pandemic circumstances?
Right. Well, speaking as a person with generalized anxiety disorder and depression, this is not feeling great right now,
Nope.
because the way my brain is wired, I'm always catastrophizing and always thinking of the worst case scenario, and in some sort of weird attempt to try to prepare myself for it if it actually happens. And so being inundated with this type of news, as well as writing this type of news, has been a little nerve-wracking. At the same time, it does help me feel more in control about things, because when I read about facts and read about what we know, it at least feels like and I know that I'm doing everything I personally can by self-isolating as much as possible, washing my hands constantly, sanitizing everything, and knowing that I, in my very, very limited capacity, am doing everything I can do also makes me feel a little bit better. But yeah, I know a lot of people who are really struggling with it. And yeah, I mean, some of the mental health experts I spoke with suggested making sure you keep in touch with people. If you are, have a usual Wednesday night dinner or trip to the bar, then continue with those type of plans, just using FaceTime or Skype, something like that. Checking in on people. So just, yeah, trying to do what you can not to be completely isolated. Or if you are a part of a religion, a lot of religious groups are now live streaming their services, and some of them are also, I think, doing like talks with a rabbi, or the priest talking to people about faith and community and everything. So for people who find a lot of support in their religious communities, uh, there are things that are being done to help people be able to keep up with their faith and with their religious community while being at home.
Yeah, and that was another thing I was going to ask you about, of course, is the other article you sent me about the religious aspect of it. And it's obviously, like you said, it's another way that people stay connected. And that's another element of life that has to change during times like this. And then, kind of talk a little bit about some of the steps that these places of worship and, people, religious leaders are saying about that.
Yeah. So in cases like, I'm most familiar with Catholicism and Judaism, and in both cases, there are rituals and traditions that are not great from a public health perspective. So, you enter a Catholic church, there's a little, container of holy water as you walk in. You dip your fingers in that, then you literally touch your face with this water that a lot of other people have touched, and then you put it directly on your face. Not great. So a lot of churches have suspended that. They just took the holy water out, and that's not part of it anymore. On the Jewish side, the kissing the Torah during procession and certain prayers has now been stopped. During the prayers where you cover your eyes with your hands, they have been instructed just to close your eyes in general and not touch your face. And that was kind of something, as I was writing that, I'm like, wow, there are so many religious traditions that involve touching your face.
Mm-hmm.
Or even like, this, what do you call it? Sign of peace, shaking hands with people or holding hands during the Lord's Prayer. Those are things that are not happening now. And, and I don't know what's going to stick and what's not going to stick after, this is all over. But that's interesting. And then some of the mosques in America are, the directive officially is to stay open until their local public health department says no gatherings, or no gatherings over a certain number of people. But at that point, they would be able to do their Juma, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, prayers at home. So, yeah. Those are kind of all that are being done. And I mean, everyone I spoke with said, if it comes to the point where the local government says you need to shut down, they will absolutely shut down. But because we've seen spread based on religious gatherings already, first with a church in Washington, D.C., where at this point there are 3 confirmed cases, one of the reverends, the organist, and at least one parishioner. And so we've seen that it could spread in conditions like that. And then there's a synagogue in New Rochelle, which is the largest cluster of cases in the United States. So there's a synagogue that has a lot of, I don't know what the exact figures are now. The last ones I found were 100 families were potentially exposed to it and have been asked to self-quarantine. The rabbi has it. The second case that was reported at all in New York City was a congregant of the synagogue. So, they really are great places for germs to spread and viruses to spread. So, I'm glad they're taking this type of action.
Yeah, and it's like I again, like I touched my face earlier when you were talking. I was like, no, stop. And it's one of those things you don't think about, or at least I didn't really before. And now it's like I'm so aware of every time I think about doing it. It's insane. But like, religion is a very physical, at least worship. A lot of worship things are very physical, and I saw a lot of people like, oh, how can those people in Iran what was the thing where you lick the thing? Isn't that something religious that they do there? They have a some sort. I don't know what it is. Anyway, it was something that they came in close contact with an artifact of some kind, and it's like, well, I remember all the communions I had as a kid where you're like literally like drinking and eating from the same
Oh
thing.
God, yeah. I forgot about the chalice. Yeah, those are
Oh
done.
yeah. Well, I grew up Episcopalian, so I'm diet Catholic, but you get the idea.
Is that the one where you dunk the communion in the wine?
You can. I think it's optional. At least the services I was raised in. You could either dunk it and just drink, or not. You would dunk it, and that would be in lieu of you drinking from it. But like you could just take swigs from it, and I guess they would wipe it down, but it was just like a cloth, between people. It's not really
Yeah,
like Lysol spray every time. So
yeah.
yeah, but it's like, yeah, but you mentioned the holy water, and it's just when you take away those little things, it does, I think, affect people a lot because I'm sure that's part of what you get out of that your religious experience is the physicality of it.
Yeah,
So,
and rituals and schedules and any sort of structure makes a lot of people feel more comfortable than, chaos or even just like a lack of ritual or schedule. So you're totally right that just by taking these small measures, it's making their usual experience a little bit different.
hmm and this is not exactly the same, of course, but I have friends that follow sports, and they're kind of, they seem like they're a little bit lost in the weeds right now.
Yeah.
They don't have that stabilizing. I don't care about sports, but I understand why they do. It's they look forward every year to the March Madness or the NBA Finals or whatever, and it's just done, not there. So that's kind of another little ritual that I think people will start once this, who knows how long it's going to last, but once those things start to come back, that's when people will start, I think, coming back online with just this general anxiety that's going on, because it's like, wow, there's no March Madness. What world are we living in? Not to me, it's like, okay, whatever. I wasn't going to watch anyway, so now I don't have to pretend to know who the teams. Yeah, so I had the opportunity before we got on to ask some of my friends what they would ask about this, and I wanted to pull some of those up and ask you here, because I think people just, there is a lot of just generalized anxiety, and this is a new thing, and there's a lot of Facebook memes, as you pointed out, and people are drinking bleach and things, so we need to we need to calm people down a little bit and get some facts
Don't
out
drink
there.
bleach.
Yeah, that's from a doctor, people. So listen, listen to that. This isn't just speculation here. What are your best guesses for the coronavirus news updates for April 14th, May 14th, and June 14th?
Oh my God. Do they have special plans on the 14th of every month?
I don't know. I guess that's because it's today,
Yeah.
14th. Yeah, maybe they'd have something as a 14th.
That's a very specific question. God, I wish I had a better idea. I'm hopeful that what happened in Italy is not going to happen here because a lot of places did take action before Italy did at the point where we're at right now. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think China now says that it's on, like, the cases are on the decline now, and that's been, the first case was December 31st, but I don't know when it started getting really bad in China. God, I don't know. I think April 14th, things will still be pretty unsure. I mean, if we're coming out of it, that's great, but I don't know if that's the case. I do think it'll probably get worse in terms of number of cases, both actually that we know, but also the number, like once we have more testing kits, the numbers will go up a lot because we can test people. And then May and June, I really don't know. This could really go anywhere. I mean, I hope by May we're kind of back to normal and, not doing this forever. But yeah, just total guesses.
Yeah, absolutely. What are you personally doing in your own home to keep from getting sick? Like what you mentioned a couple of them, I think, just cleaning. But is there anything else that you're doing differently than you usually do?
Um, Not really. I am a much more, there are days when I don't leave my apartment building, because I just don't have a need to. And even when I go down to get my mail, I'm like, as soon as I come back, I'm very cautious about that because who knows who's touched the mailboxes or, anything like that. So that's kind of one thing that I've been extra cautious about. Not because I think it's living on the mail, but more interacting with people in the lobby, touching the communal mailbox area. Yeah, I don't know. I've been working from home for almost a year, about 10 months now. So that part's different, not different, except for I usually would work from the library or from a coffee shop. And I'm not doing that now, but also feel guilty about not supporting local businesses because
I know. I feel so bad about that kind of stuff.
So some people have suggested buying gift cards to the places that you would normally go and, just making sure they have some sort of income now and then you could spend them later once this is all done. So I might try to do that, which normally I wouldn't. But yeah, I normally at least go out walking more than I've been doing. And part of that's not so much quarantine. It's just that I've been extremely busy this past week with kind of everything. And so, yeah, I've been taking more time to do stretching at home, some like YouTube workout videos that are free just to kind of get myself moving in lieu of, walking long distances in Manhattan. Yeah, I think those are kind of the main ones. And then, yeah, I normally cook a lot, but I've been cooking even more and then also feeling guilty about that for, not supporting people. But,
Yeah, this is really just awakened all the worst things that I was trying to get away from. Like, I felt bad about using the self-checkout at the store, and I'm like, I'll find an open lane. And then somebody, no, I'm not saying all cashiers do this, but this one definitely did, licked her fingers before she opened the bag to put my food in the bag. I was like, no bag, please. I was just like, I'm using a machine from now on. I'm so sorry.
yeah.
I mean, and I didn't want to like make a scene, but it's like, what are you doing? And then, I want to like you said, so local restaurants. I use nothing I love more than going to a Mexican restaurant and reading a book. I can't do that anymore. I can't go to a Starbucks or a coffee shop and work anymore. That's out. But I feel bad because I want to support places like that because this is when they need us the most. But you're right, gift cards are probably a good idea. Other small businesses are hurting, I'm sure. So. What about like delivery? Like how safe is that? Like food packages, anything? Because like we have Amazon Prime, and I want to just like Amazon Prime a bunch of stuff going forward, but I'm like, I don't know. Like, is that even safer? I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
So we just are at the very beginning of understanding how long it stays on different surfaces. So there was a study that was published this week where they just basically took some of the virus and sprayed it on a bunch of different surfaces to see how long it could stay. Unfortunately, cardboard wasn't one of them. That's kind of one. They have like a list of things they're going to, be testing soon. I spoke to one doctor in Florida who did a presentation for their local post office and like FedEx people. And he suggested spraying the packages down just as out of an abundance of caution, just because we don't know, even though it's highly, highly unlikely that, packages would be infected with something. He just thought like, it takes 2 seconds. I'll just do it. And, if it's pointless, it's pointless, but at least I've taken that precaution. But yeah, that's kind of what were the other surfaces. The worst ones in the survey or in the study were stainless steel and plastic, where the virus lasted up to 3 days, but could possibly last longer because this is just one very small study. And then copper did much better. That went away within a few hours, which makes sense since you have, copper IUDs and it's used sometimes in other medical things. But yeah, we're kind of still figuring out how long it can stay on packages and stuff like that. As of now, the WHO says that that's like a very minor threat, if any. So that should be fine. I mean, whenever I do open a package, I do, make sure to wash my hands right away and, put the box in the recycling room right away rather than just like opening something, throwing it on the box on the floor and then waiting. And with like takeout delivery, yeah, I'm so conflicted because, in all the lists of things that you could do to help people, like ordering delivery is on there. But yeah, you really don't technically know how they're handling the food. Not so much the delivery person, but, who's making it, who's packaging it.
Right.
And I mean, ideally, in a perfect world, we'd have perfect hand hygiene in every restaurant all the time. But yeah, I personally haven't ordered delivery yet, but I also bought way too much food the other day. So I've been like,
I did too. Yeah. Absolutely. If I get sick, how long should I expect to be sick for?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. We just heard from a woman this week who was infected in Washington State. So she was only sick for a few weeks, but I don't know. She was a younger person. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it depends on your age and your health. So if you're a non-smoker, young person without a compromised immune system, in generally good health, it should be hopefully within 2 weeks. But beyond that, once the symptoms start developing into what looks like pneumonia, that's when things get a little trickier. That's when people have to go to the hospital. So, yeah, but at this point, it looks like it's not more than a few weeks to run its course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, this is a question just for me, but like, how guilty should I feel for not like utilizing every second I'm trapped in my house? Like, people are always like, Shakespeare wrote King Lear when he was in isolation for the plague, and there's the Decameron or whatever of the Black Plague, and it's like, it's just so much like, if you're any kind of like creative type person and you're not like you're composing your masterwork right now, it's kind of like you're wasting your golden opportunity. You always talk about wanting to go on a retreat. Well, here's your retreat. Yeah. It's like
yeah. And I fell into that mindset trap as well. I thought, like, oh, okay, I have a book proposal that is 3.5 years overdue at this point. Very, very overdue. And I'm like, yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. But what happens is I have my normal kind of anchor clients and workload that my normal work for every day. And then I've been getting a lot of Corona related assignments. So that's kind of on top of that. And then I'm kind of fielding phone calls from friends and family about how seriously they should take this, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, like most days I'll start working around 7 in the morning and usually don't finish up until around midnight. And so just like what I need to do or, talking to people. So yeah, this proposal is probably not going to happen the media coverage right now is really interesting because some publications are done with coronavirus coverage and they have all the assignments out, covered all the angles they want to cover. So they don't want to cover anything else, but then we're also like, oh no, we're not really taking pitches right now. So that's kind of one side of things. And you have other publications that have just gone full steam ahead and have a lot of coronavirus content and, are churning it out every day, looking for new angles, that sort of thing. So, and travel writing is pretty much on hold right now, which is annoying. I don't do a lot of travel writing, but I do a decent amount. And places that I've pitched and published in the past have just said, like, we're on hiatus for now. So that's kind of frustrating. Yeah, I don't know if I'll get to do that. Not deep clean my apartment, but just like get all the crap off the floor. I did that today at least. So because that was making it feel much worse about it. I was just surrounded by piles. I had like 2 suitcases that were still packed from previous trips, just laundry on the floor. So yeah, I do feel much better now that things are at least a little bit in order and it just feels a little less chaotic.
Yeah. Well, right before all this happened, we moved to a new apartment, and also we're gonna have our third child at the end of April. So hope everything works out.
And
Yeah, no, it's gonna be a little girl.
oh, that's
It's gonna be
great.
crazy. That we're out. But yeah, I've been so busy. I feel like I should be like composing my master work of some kind, and meanwhile I'm screwing a crib together. I'm just like I'm doing this as best I can. So I haven't had people talk about going stir crazy or just having nothing to do, or I haven't experienced that part of it yet. Maybe I'll get there one day, but I doubt it. So
Exactly what I'm watching on Netflix. I'm like nothing. I'm
yeah,
working all day.
can't.
And
Who has
when I
time?
also start working and then work till I go to bed. So it's yeah.
Right.
Um, but I think we also need to, as cliche as this sounds, be kind to ourselves and that could add to someone's anxiety. This kind of idea that we should be using all of this time, and we should clean our closets, or write our book proposal, or whatever you need to do. But if you're feeling really anxious, that's we don't need another thing to be anxious about. So I kind of
Yeah.
think of it in terms of making it through it day by day, getting done what I absolutely have to get done, and then focusing on self care for the rest of the time, which unfortunately now has just been sleeping. uh, but yeah, that's at this point we definitely don't need something else to be anxious about. So yeah, if people are feeling that way, I would encourage them to kind of put things in perspective, realize that this is not a retreat. A retreat is something you do willingly, and usually in a nice place, not your own apartment. And part of that idea is getting in a different physical space to hopefully get in a different mind space. But no, when you're at your same desk that you work at every day, it's it doesn't have the same effect. So definitely don't beat yourself up about it.
Well, fair enough. Well, that's good to hear. But yeah, what you read any good books lately? I mean, I might have more time to read soon, I bet, but
Currently I'm reading a book on the history of vaudeville. Uh,
oh,
I can't remember what it's called. It's yellow though, and so that's been really interesting because that's come up a lot in my pop culture articles throughout the years. Is kind of roots of entertainment in vaudeville, etc. So that's kind of what I'm currently reading. Um, but yeah, unfortunately, most of the books I read are for work purposes. I can't remember the last time I read something that was like purely for fun.
well, fair enough. Yeah. Well, we've probably won't be going record shopping for a while, but we did just get a record player, so I have a bunch of old records I've been going through too. So that's been fun to kind of listen back to all those with my kids. But have you been listening to any music lately you want to recommend?
Sure, yeah. I kind of fluctuate between work music that I have on in the background. Sometimes I like um, the like Baroque classical music.
Hmm.
I think that's like because some classical music is very slow and I mean beautiful, but not conducive to working. When I hear like those jaunty little little numbers that kind of fall into the Baroque category, it's like a little more lively and kind of makes me feel like I can get work done. And then Pandora came on my TV automatically, so I've just been using that instead of other things. So I listen to the Baroque Classical Music Channel, channel based on Gershwin music, because I think that's also good for working. My most recent discovery, and has been playing nonstop, is the 60s French pop radio station,
Hmm.
um, where, yeah, it's all 60s French pop music. And the 60s are usually my decade of choice between that and the 90s. So it's been interesting to hear like the same type of songs, but in a different language and also just different songs. So that's been really good. And then kind of my go-to comfort stations are 90s pop and 90s alternative. So those are,
Nice.
but yeah. So if you're looking for new music recommendations, I am not great at that. I think the last album I purchased, oh no, I did buy Lizzo. That
Oh,
was,
nice.
yeah. That's like the last one I actually I got of new music. But yeah, I'm kind of terrible at keeping up with that.
Yeah, no, my kids go absolutely crazy for the Lizzo Tiny Desk concert. Like they know every word, surprisingly, and every move. And my daughter just throws her head back at the end of the song, and it's yeah, it's crazy. It's a lot of fun. So I'm definitely on that as well. She's very extremely talented. So. Um, but yeah, well, hey, thank you so much for taking so much time to talk to me. And this is just something that's been on my mind, and I haven't really talked about it yet. But so I wanted to talk about it with you since you seem like you know what you're talking about. So I appreciate you sharing your wisdom and everything. And I hope everything works out in the coming days. To stay safe and stay healthy in any way you can. Yeah, it's going to take a lot to get through this, but I'm confident we will. And actually, I think a lot of positive things are going to come out of this as far as like people finding a renewed sense of community. Because I think there was kind of a worry I felt in the last few years where it's like people are so getting in their own bubbles and stuff. But it's like this is one thing it's affecting everybody, and it's one of those cases where it's like everybody's going through it. And I feel like even though it's kind of pretty jaunty right now, and I'm also feeling very anxious, of course, but I think on the flip side of that, since we're all feeling the same way, the upside would be if we could all find some sense of community coming out of this and see that we really have just each other and that's it. So
Yeah, definitely.
that's as hopeful as I get. So I hope that was good enough. So
Trying to do is looking at the positive things. Yeah, for me the big one is hoping that people's attitudes towards public health change a little bit and they start taking this more seriously and realizing it's not all about you. Yeah, so yes, that's a good way to end things, is looking towards the positive things that could happen as a result of the outbreak.
Maybe not so much casual touching on the streets, maybe going forward. But other than that, the sense of community,
Yes.
the intrinsic thing. But anyway, thank you so much, and yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, great. Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
You too.